Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, whatever time it may be when you ingratiate us and entertain the idea of listening to our comments on a few things. I am joined this morning by Dr. Charles Alexander and the Mike Jones. And we are going to delve into a topic right away. This is the anniversary for the 1951 submission by December the 17th, 1951, of Paul Robeson's submission of We Charge Genocide. The petition submitted to the United Nations, that is, We Charge Genocide. So I want to get right into this conversation. And there's some unpacking that we actually, another one of the deep dives that Dr. Alexander has engaged in brings to light a scenario or several scenarios that are replaying themselves today that we fail to give the adequate attention to. Doc, with no further delay, good morning, good afternoon.
Afternoon.
Take it away, sir.
So this is our second or third year, um, closing out the year with a conversation about about this document, We Charge Genocide. One quick edit, and so the document, I think, by and large, is compiled by William Patterson, but it was in fact presented to the UN by Paul Robeson.
Oh, absolutely. It was
And
definitely presented by, yeah, exactly, just as you mentioned.
and and so But one of the things as I was reviewing the document this morning, and I was looking at the list of signatories, and I was just curious as to whether or not if there were any signatories uh, from from state of Missouri or from St. Louis proper, and uh, there's a brother um, from St. Louis, and let me find his name again. What was that brother's name? Reverend Obadiah Jones, I believe it is. And so the curious thing, I want to see. So what is this brother known for? Why is he a signatory? And what what might we know, or what could we find about this brother uh, who again signed this document, and it's from St. Louis, Missouri. And so I type his name in, and I find a Newsweek article, and it's speaking to a trial, a Communist Party trial that was occurring in St. Louis in, I believe, 1954. So 3 years after he was a signatory to We Charge Genocide, and he was testifying. He was one of the prime witnesses for the prosecution. And when and it seems that not only was he that, but was proud to be that. And it, he was indeed, he acknowledged on stand, I believe, that he was an FBI and informant. And so kind of hard for me to believe that he wasn't the same, 3 years prior, when We Charge Genocide was being drafted and put together. So it just it brought me to this, it brought me back to the present when I look at the gentleman who told Cori Bush, "I would never run against you. I got your back, sister." And the next thing you know, he's either the highest or the second highest, beneficiary of monies from APAC. And so, bought and sold. And, so it really just brought to the fore this legacy of, betrayal and, intentional complicity and in the denial, minimally the denial of our rights and the execution and the ongoing execution of the genocide.
Well, what we found, what I found interesting was what he was testifying about. And yeah, he was testifying, accusing, individuals of being communists and a number of other things. And another thing that is very, very pertinent, I think that we get lost in almost a residue of patriotism, and we fail to understand that the war that those that our forefathers fought against this country with the FBI COINTEL program and so forth, those things have not totally disappeared. And we never, I mean, if you begin to speak in your spirit, fears of influence about those things, you oftentimes are seen as paranoid.
That's what people say. Or you're a conspiracy theorist. Um, well, before they called me a conspiracy theorist or anybody who engages in these conversations, before they say you're a conspiracy theorist, they usually preface it all with all white folks ain't bad. That's kind of that's kind of how they kick off the conversation, right? And it's like, again, all we have to do is take a cursory glance at history, and we see these patterns repeating themselves over and over and over and over again. And but and within that, you see, uh, you literally see the individual that is, that betrays the movement, whatever the movement might be at a particular time, you know, uh, expressly stating that this is my betrayal of this particular effort is in the best interest of the people. That is always the justification, that is used. And and even when when someone questioned why he participated in this particular piece, he was like, I think the guy was like, so did they, how much money did you take or whatever? And he's like, I ain't had to take no money. He said, I work for money. And so, this not even a situation, by his own admission, where he was bribed or took the payoff. So he in theory didn't sell out. He just on the wrong side of history. And
And humanity.
yes, yes. And so, we see these things over and over and over again. And, and we wonder, and again, it's not to confuse, because I was having this other conversation with someone the other day with, just kind of relative to our progress. And this is not to confuse or to suggest that we have not made progress, but the progress we've made because of the fight, not because of some conscious and intentional you know righteous reckoning of the oppressor. And so when we're looking at these things, it is important that we be able to have the pattern recognition and be able to see these things real time. And so again, when we're looking at whatever it is that we perceive to be Black leadership, I think I don't think that is very difficult for us to be able to establish and acknowledge that those folks that we don't bankroll, those folks that either we call or are acknowledged as Black leadership. Their funding sources somewhere literally outside of the community. And so they're not beholden to the community. And so in that aspect, you necessarily get the leadership that you deserve because we haven't, that's the part of this that over the course of this fight, at best, has been an ebb and flow, but that we don't, we really don't maintain. We don't, there's nobody there's nobody on the national scene that exists because of our stewardship. There's nobody representing us in that regard. And so we remain vulnerable to people, similar to this Obadiah Jones, similar to the U.S. representative elect in St. Louis. These folks are bought, they're bought and owned by someone else.
And it's worthy to note two things. Reverend Obadiah Jones was supposedly a pastor, and he did take $11,000. My understanding is that when he was asked about the money, he says he was not going to not take the money. So he took the money.
He took money, but he works for money.
Yeah, but but he works for money. Mike Jones, you have any thoughts on this subject? Because
Uh,
it's an
yeah,
there's an
I,
overarching wall that they have. And we spoke about this in the green room. Welcome, Attorney Gerald Christmas. There's an overarching wall that's white supremacy, and there are a number of bricks in them. This is another one of the bricks. But Mike Jones, do you have any thoughts on the subject?
yeah, I was struck when I read it, and then as Charles was talking, and you guys were going back and forth, I thought about something Charles said that may not be true. We probably have not made any progress. Now, I'll say our material situation has evolved just as mankind, as a species has made material advances. So our material conditions might not be what they were 100 years ago or 150 years ago, but relatively, and this is Einstein's universe, so nothing is constant, everything is relative to something else. Relative to our oppressor, you could argue that our situation, we have not made any progress. And it always makes me go back to kind of what I think for me is the beginning of our historical struggle that kind of emerged in the national consciousness around the 1830s. That was the abolitionist movement. And you start thinking about the Charles Allen, but for me, I always come back to Douglass because for me, he's not the only person, but he's the most not even articulate. He takes up the most space, and we know more about him. I think it's easier to know more about him. And as Charles was talking, I was thinking we have really, if you change the wording, his 1852 speech about what is the Declaration. What is Independence Day to the slave? You could really kind of rephrase it, freshen it up, but that's our question today. I mean, what is any of this to us? If you really take a look at our situation vis-a-vis the environment, and when I thought about the FBI informant, I thought about Harriet Tubman, and who is quoted as saying, somebody said he freed 1,000 enslaved people during her time in that struggle, and her response was, I could have freed 1,000 more if they had known they were slaves. And that is, for me, our historical ongoing existential dilemma. We really have never come to grips with who we are here, who they believe or want us to be, and then what does that mean? And then what's our relationship to them? Because Black soldiers went into World War One and World War Two hoping to prove that we were now worthy to be American citizens. They weren't defending the country literally per se. Their motivation was that. So our relationship, to me, and Charles can speak to this professionally, but reminds me of any abuse victim. And you don't want to blame the abuser. You want to say that it must be something I can do to make him or her not want to do this, rather than acknowledge maybe they're just evil. Okay, I mean, because you've done nothing to deserve this treatment. Okay, so why do you keep rationalize it? I played back our friends, the colleagues in LA, kind of did some clipping of what we talked about a week or so ago. And I had forgotten I had said it, but the whole thing about Jesus and the forgiveness and, like what, only an oppressed, abused people who have internalized their oppression would even consider that they should be turning the other cheek to the people that do them violence. And nobody would want to go to a heaven where the criteria for being admitted is forgiving the people that's giving you hell. I mean, that literally, religion there's a rational basis why people believe, but that don't make sense. I mean, that defies just common logic. That if and I think I said it before, but if you're an oppressed people, you should be looking for Moses, not waiting on Jesus, and you should be looking for the guy that had the conversation with Moses that kind of said, did you talk to him, Moses? Yeah. Did you tell him what I wanted? Yeah, I told him, man. He said, what did he say? He said, he ain't doing it. And don't come back and bother him no more. So what you want me to do now? And God said, Moses, I don't want you to do nothing. I want you to go home. Matter of fact, put sacrifice some lambs so you can mark the doors. Because I'm going to be coming through here tonight with Luca Brasi, okay? And you should pack and you should also pack, because your ass will be leaving Egypt in the morning. Okay, and I ain't gonna have to come get you. He gonna send you out. Now, how come we don't want that guy?
We don't want that guy. We don't want that guy that told him you're gonna have to have that land. You can get that land, but you're gonna have to fight for it and get it. We just want the Sikkim guy. We want to pull God out of our sleeve. Go and do. No, we don't want that guy at all. But Mike, you raised.
We don't want we don't want any concept of the higher being that uh, ultimately rests with our sense of agency. See, we want magical thinking.
Yeah.
And so we misquote scripture all the time so that it works out that just because he
Yeah.
gonna do it. And then when it work out our way, we say that, won't he do it?
Yeah.
But we only say that when we get our way.
Yeah.
When we get our way, look at God. When
Yeah.
it don't go our way, we be trying to figure out, well, what I do?
All right.
Why God? And
Mike,
so we don't want nothing that says to us that we have some agency in this matter.
absolutely. We're afraid of power in general. We think that power is a bad thing, and we fail to realize that we have some. But I want to revisit before we go to you, Dr. Christmas. Good morning. It is great seeing you as always. But I want to revisit one thing that Mike Jones spoke about, which is tantamount to um, victim blaming. We never take account of the system and hold the system uh, accountable for what they do. I'll give you an example. We'll see during the course of this holiday season, you're going to see several individuals in some sort of social media videos acting fools in airports and acting fools with individuals that can only follow orders. The smallest people in the chain on the totem pole. But those same individuals that raised that holy ruckus would never storm the Bastille and deal with the individuals that are creating policy. We are conditioned to do that. We don't think analytically as a country. We will not hold the decision makers hostile. If there is something wrong in the NBA right now, I will guarantee you that the blame will be put on the players. You never hear the owners criticized. Very, very rarely. From NBA radio, from ESPN, all of them. We simply blame the the lowest person on the chain, and that's exactly what happens to us. Why in the world are police killing black folks the way they do, or why in the world are they so hostile? Why are the banks so violent in their decision making to individuals in black zip codes? It must be something that you all are doing. And that's
Well,
plain.
there is so one of the things that we gotta to level set, it ain't blame it to state the facts aren't victim blaming. It becomes victim blaming when we're not adding, the context, the antecedents, the process and the conclusion, right? So we don't contextualize it, then yeah, that is victim blaming. But if 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 you state the facts and uh so again, so we've talked about many times our trauma response. That's typically a part of how I conceptualize this. We've talked about many times psychological misorientation. Today I'm gonna add another one, Wayusi, which is a
Say it again, Doc.
Wayusi. So it is really just WEUSI, waves. And so but it's a Kiswahili word that means black. But it too is just this. It is, a another of the terms that that emerged as Black psychologists were trying to conceptualize this whole thing from our own frame of reference. And, fundamentally, this kind of speaks to a constant, um, a constant evaluation, self-evaluation that's predicated on, this this external validation. It's predicated on literally being white, right? And being viewed as such, and da 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 da. Trying to manage, and it's difficult for people. It can be difficult for anybody that's on the, kind of the continuum for identity development. So like even the person who is clear that it's the system of global white supremacy, they still have the challenge of trying to right size the rage for all things European versus whatever relative benefits they enjoy from being in this space, because it could still be counterintuitive. And so it's about establishing and maintaining that balance and sense of self. But where we struggle, and this kind of gets to the point, and with regard to, let's say in regard to like blaming the victim, oftentimes we don't want we don't want the facts of the case presented. To borrow from you and Attorney Christmas's nomenclature, we don't well, don't say that, but we gotta say it again. We gotta put it into its proper context, but we gotta say those things that we are not doing. Those things, and then we got to say those things that if we're doing them wrong, because they're holding up the progress. The actions of the few in a lot of situations are holding up the progress of the many. Not in the not in the global sense of it, because then that leads folks to say, well, we are our own worst enemy, which I patently disagree with that statement all the time. Whenever I hear it. The enemy is always our worst enemy. We just be acting up in his presence.
Could you say that again? For the brothers and sisters in the back. Okay.
Yes, the enemy is always our worst enemy, and so is in that fight with him that we get distracted, and this is where the psychological misorientation and the way we see anxiety. This is where these things are manifest, because we start to question, what's going on, and this kind of goes back to your point that we act out against those closest to us, and it's us, and so we don't go after, Mr. Chop. We act out against us, and we blame us, when in reality, the majority of the genesis of the problem is the enemy.
Absolutely.
At any point in the day to day.
Doc, you're going to have to work us through this new saying. I love it. It looks nuanced. You're going to have to work us through it, but I want to go to Dr. Christmas right now and get your thoughts, Dr. Christmas, on this.
My thoughts on our attack on each other?
Well, actually, I'm going to bring you up to speed. This will be a good time to give a slight review. Earlier, we started the show in celebration, the December 17th, 1951 submission. The report certainly wasn't written, but it was submitted by Paul Robeson with respect to we charge genocide, and it was submitted to the United Nations about the treatment that we have received in the United States at the hands of the system of white folks in general. We have been workshopping through some of those issues, but one issue that came to mind was this Reverend Odiah,
Obadiah.
Obadiah, Obadiah Jones, and his the encountering. Actually, it was encountered and his interfacing with the FBI as an informant. And these things that he did as a result of that. And in dealing with those issues, Mike Jones did a very good job of all of analyzing our relationship with the United States and this abusive, pimpish relationship. And the fact that instead of us dealing with the relationship in terms of the way it is, we continue to act as battered spouses, stating that, oh, it's not that bad. I've just triggered them. I've just triggered them. I just got to have dinner on the table when he gets home. I just got to put 15 chocolate chips in every cookie.
You know, we don't know anywhere else to go to. You know, that's the uniqueness about our experience, because we cannot look at our heritage and go directly back to a point to say, well, if I'm not going to deal with this situation here in this country, I'm going to go back to Ghana, where I'm originally from. I'm going to go back to Nigeria. I'm going to go back to the Congo and work there where my family, my ancestors are. We don't have any connection like that. We know that we are primarily African descendants, but we don't have a direct connection like other cultures do. And it's what makes us really that experiment over here and want to assimilate constantly with white people and not identify them as an enemy. And then as we moving forward with less struggle, it becomes even harder. I don't think we'll ever be able to get to the point where we were before previously in working united. When we talk about Harriet Tubman and the other individuals in our history, because of the oppression that they faced and the lack of that type of overt oppression in your face right now, Mike. So you could act under that because you could actually feel that and you actually knew it, and it made you want to fight it and come together collectively, from the principles of Kwanzaa, working collectively together to solve our problems, because everybody felt it, but they don't now. And they're living in different spectrums, and that's why we're trying to define this, and it just makes it harder there has to be some type of serious external punishment brought upon us as a whole to make us come together now. Maybe that'll happen in these upcoming years with this new administration, but it's going to have to be. That's the only way. It's only through the force and the pressure that we'll come together and have that kind of focus. We just won't have it under these current circumstances.
But Gerald, every time you say that, it feels like that's not what's happening.
You don't think so?
That we're not feeling the pressure?
We feeling some pressure, but I think whenever we feel more pressure, we get more focused. Like when I look back to the last Trump administration, I can feel the difference in us from the last Trump administration through the Biden administration, in the sense of, how we reacted to situations, how more we stayed in tune. It may not have been better for us, but I can definitely, I can feel the difference in the climate, the difference in our reactions, and the difference in our ability to stay in tune and try to respond to situations that the Trump administration put us in, that the Biden administration did not, which we took definitely a different approach. And we always take a more relaxed position under a Democratic administration, to me. And we seem to lose some focus.
Well, I would probably agree that we take some more, I would probably agree that in the main, we tend not to blame the White House when it's a Democratic.
Yeah, we don't. We don't.
But it ain't that we don't know that we are oppressed.
We know that we're oppressed. we never forget that we're oppressed. It just seems to be that the more pressure we have, the more focus we put on our oppression and trying to work and come together to solve it. The less oppressed we are, the less we seem to pay attention to it, and people become more comfortable in their different silos, and they take less interest in what's happening to us as a whole, as a people as a whole.
You know
I'll,
what's
I'll come
amazing?
back to that. Go ahead, Mike Jim.
No,
Now, I want to kind of say, bring some nuance to a couple of things that you and Charles have just said. First of all, we don't think we're oppressed, okay? Now, we are oppressed, but oppressed is a political term as much as it is descriptive. And it comes with a political connotation. And being oppressed means that there is an oppressor that is your adversary. And that's how you are defining your physical situation. I would suggest we've never historically even bought into that, particularly in the 20th century. We have been subjects to the empire in our colony, and we just wanted to be treated better by the mother country, but we had no desire to be free of the mother country. Now, for about 20 years or so, there was that tension inside the Black community, and we would talk about oppression and liberation. We didn't talk about freedom rides or freedom struggle. We talking about liberation. So contextually, those are different concepts. The other thing that we haven't done, and there is a model out there. You're right, Gerald. We don't have a specific homeland on the African continent that we can point to, because all of our ancestors, forebears, came from different places. They were a random group of people kidnapped and trafficked to North America. But if we just looked at the Jewish community, now I just want you to take this intellectual construct for a minute, that I'm probably going to get some of it wrong. And I'm not trying to be historically accurate as much as I'm trying to be politically descriptive. Zionism as an idea starts in the 1880s, mostly in France, okay? And the whole point of Zionism was that Jews who had been basically integrated into European society, also discriminated against and harshly treated, but integrated into European society, needed a homeland, a place to go back to. Now, in the beginning, all Jewish people didn't agree with that. You know, part of what happened to Jewish people in Germany is they didn't see it coming, because they thought they was Germans. They thought they was Jewish Germans, but they thought they were Germans, and they never would have, and had fought in World War I, and had become, even while discriminated against, integrated into the country, not like us. And they claimed a homeland based on the history of a semi-literate people in a creation myth that they made up. They ain't even history, okay? You don't know if Abraham is real. He ain't write nothing down. God damn sure didn't leave no tablet in a deed with Palestine being given to Jewish people in perpetuity. And the damnedest thing is, they had been gone from Palestine for 2,000 years. The Romans kicked them out of Palestine 2100, 2100 years ago. And they're making, and the people that they kicked out, the Jewish people that they kicked out, Hebrews, whatever you want to say, are not the ones that came back. None of them, all the people that came back was from Europe. Now, I'm not saying they wasn't Jewish, that was their religion, but they was all from Europe, okay? And there were people in Palestine, Greater Palestine, who looked like the people who had always been there. Okay, they didn't go nowhere. They stayed for the whole 2,000 years, and they developed a rationale and a strategy to displace them people. And now you're seeing basically the equivalent of genocide and sanitizing the place, of basically eradicating
Ethnic cleansing.
Cleansing, thanks. That's ethnic cleansing. Thank you, Larry. So here's the interesting part. Jewish people who have no intention of going to Israel support the idea of a Jewish homeland. Okay? Literally. They ain't going. Most of the folks who are Jewish in America they visit Israel. They have family. They actively support the idea of a homeland, even though they're not going. Our politics is dominated by our commitment to a Jewish homeland, and our lazy ass won't get a homeland for ourselves.
Right.
Correct.
Now, that's a hell of a thing.
But only one caveat to that, and that is what I think is even worse in that narrative, or particularly the culmination of that narrative, is the thought that Israel represents the agency of Jewish people, and that is not what it represents.
I agree.
It represents the United States and Britain and France not wanting the Jews in the United States, Britain, and France. That's why we got Israel. And so,
wait a minute, and Charles, also the United States needed a base of operations.
That's what I was thinking. Also, the base operations
after World War II.
Right. But that part of it was secondary.
Of Arab liberation movements that ran the British and the French out of the Middle East.
Absolutely, but that part of it was secondary.
Right. And then, Dr. Alexander, why do you think they were so concerned about why they were so concerned that they did not want to have the Jewish population in any of these countries?
Anti-Semitism.
Just straight anti-Semitism.
Just anti-Semitism, just period.
Mm.
And so,
but then I guess I'm trying to go just a little deeper. Why are people so anti Jewish? Is it because of their level of organization?
I have no idea. Well, I mean, here's what sociologists would tell you, anthropologists, psychologists, is all societies are hierarchical, and they're dominant groups. And one of the things the dominant group always needs is an other, because when there's it, and help me with the French sociologist history, Professor Charles, the scapegoating theory. Rene
Rousseau?
Yeah.
Rousseau.
And basically, one of the things that maintains social cohesion is having an out-group that when things are going wrong with the dominant group, they can say it's their fault, and if it wasn't for them. So the Jews were the scapegoat for Western culture, Western Christian culture, okay, for 2,000 years. Once they got kicked, you see, because they didn't have that problem in Palestine. When they were Jewish people in the Middle East, they didn't get scapegoated. Okay, it's only when the Romans basically kicked them out of the Middle East and they ultimately resettled as minorities, just like gypsies in these European countries, that they become the other. And they're identifiable because their religion and a large part of their culture is so much different.
And they weren't having a problem at the onset of the Zionist occupation.
Well, I think it's their,
to
me, living in the Jewish community here in St. Louis, I also think it's it's the way that they come in and they implement it in the community, their ability to stay organized and completely take over a community, I believe, intimidates individuals. Because I feel like their anti-Semitism and, racism against Black people are, it seems like we battle back and forth between, who's number one, who's number two, because they talk about the Holocaust and, it's documented and filmed, and we talk about the slave trade and it being much more severe and lasting much longer, but they always want to argue that their situation is worse. They have the worst situation. And I feel like we go back and forth and say, no, we have the worst situation.
Well,
but they get to pass as white people
to have drama arguments, but
the drama arguments do happen though. I'm not saying it's good. It's a good thing.
Because at the end of the day, they white.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. At the end of the day, they white. That's how I look at it.
At the end of the day,
and that's why they able to do the things that they're able to do.
What works for them is not absolutely their agency or organization. Is that they are white.
Right.
And many of them help to facilitate the growth of whatever, because they altered their names and their identities on the front end of this thing. And so, and throughout this thing, that happened too. Mm-hmm. And so when we draw the comparison, we got to make the entire comparison, or we got to have all the relevant factors. And so, this thought also that post World War II that they came here and built this thing into what they are financially. No, they didn't. They were already here.
Mm-hmm.
They were here, and a few came here, and they came to New York, they came to Chicago, and they came to whatever the other top three spaces were, and were met with an already burgeoning and thriving community. It was insular because it was also under attack for the same reasons we've already said. But what didn't happen is this whole thing, nevermore, and they just came here and all of a sudden they was good. That's not what happened. And so when we make those comparisons, we just got to be honest about how they got all of it. And really, they got all of it. So the same thing that's going on right now, they get what, $3 to $6 billion from the United States every year. That's how they did this whole thing. Mm-hmm. So if we was getting subsidized them like $3 to $6 billion, I'm pretty sure we would be in a different state.
Exactly.
And
it's because they're white, like you said.
And it's because they're white, and
they're white.
And religion is
because of the religion. So all of those things, have played a part. Did the Holocaust happen? Yes. Were they oppressed in other parts of Europe? Yes. Were we oppressed? Yes. Can we escape our oppression living with the oppressor? No. So that is what we need to be kind of focused on.
Let me say this real quick before you go, Mike, because I don't want to have this happen again. When you end the statement, there needs to be a pregnant pause on some of these things. Yeah, because when you said, when you took us all the way through that analysis, Mike, and then said our lazy asses won't do anything, and you kept right on talking. You need to pause for emphasis. All right, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you, but
Okay. But I really meant that in the sense that if they could do that, we could have done
you,
that.
I,
We could,
I, I know it, but I need
Right,
that hammer.
right.
I need that hammer. Don't I? Don't I? You got to have an
yeah.
inflection there. I'm sorry, but go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Here's where we get connected and disconnected with the Jewish community. And I'm only taking this as a function of the American experience. In America, all Europeans came over here as something. They have their European identities, Italians, whatever, Catholics, whatever. But everybody that came over ultimately gets turned into being white and Christian. Christian writ large, white. You don't worry about where you came from. You're white folks. Jewish people are able to pull off 50% of it. They can pull off the white part. They can't pull off the Christian part. So, given the underlying principle, the underlying contradiction between Christianity and Judaism, in my opinion, it has nothing to do with the ethics or social practices that flow from it. It's just that Jews and Christians can never agree about the divinity of Jesus. I mean, that's what separates them, okay? And there is no way to compromise that. So they'll always be 180 degrees apart. Our problem is we can become Christian, but don't nobody know what that looks like. Anybody can be a Christian, but we can't become white. Okay.
Right.
And as Charles has indicated, white is the big thing. Okay. So Hispanics can come here and they can kind of think they white, and every now and then white people let them think they're white too, but they ain't. But and they gonna get to find out what it means to be black again in a minute. But fundamentally, race and religion defines identity in America. And then when you put money on it, that's the white separator, okay? But fundamentally, we cannot break into that paradigm. There's nothing we can do. I don't care how hard you try. We go always be black. And we can either embrace that and make it our strength, or continue to try to run from it, change it, and make it acceptable for white. Because as James Baldwin eloquently points out regularly, that as long as white people are white, ain't nothing you can do, because they need something. If they're gonna be white, somebody's got to be not white. That's us.
And
so
I don't think we'll ever be able to accept the blackness, like you said, unless we go back to segregation. Okay, as long as
we didn't always accept it there. See, when I say accept
it seemed like we were closer to accepting it than there.
No,
you was in a caste situation that necessitated that you live where you live.
Right, you didn't have a choice, and
you
I think
that's
the only way we'll do
it. That wasn't acceptance. That was
the closest we ever came. The closest we ever came to literally accepting black as an idea in mass was the 60s.
And okay? And so again, when we're
the whole decade, you think the whole decade of the 60s?
Yeah, because there's two things. The white folks had a response to the civil rights movement. Black folks had a response to the civil rights movement too. They said it wasn't enough, and so there's a radical reaction to black civil rights. Nobody could believe you guys wasn't old enough.
That's what I'm saying, and I think that's where the difficulty really comes, Mike, is because the time period that you saying where we really had this reaction to it, for me, is the time period when I don't even remember being on the earth. I was here, but I just, I'm so frustrated because I cannot remember that time period. I know I was living, but I just don't have no understanding of it at all.
Here's the example that I'll make. Dr. King was probably the most unpopular. I won't use that word, but he didn't have black support, and he didn't have black support because he was trying to figure out how not to condemn America morally, but not just have written America. I mean, his stance as a Christian minister, that's right. That literally alienated, and I'm gonna say alienated him from me when I was at that age. There was literally nothing I wanted to have to do with any of that because I had basically rejected the United States, but I wasn't by myself, a whole bunch of us. And it took me maturing to understand the profound nature of their struggle and all of that. So I grew into that respect and admiration. But man, it ain't the last thing any of us wanted to see. If it wasn't the Black Panthers, Rap, Stokely, man, it wasn't nobody. Didn't nobody had nothing to do with no black preachers talking about we shall overcome. I could use some stronger words than that. And like I told you about the Vietnam War, literally the ultimate, there was a black political movement that saw itself in opposition to America and American imperialism. That's where Counter and Tail comes from. Literally, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, this was not white folks jumping on us. This was us trying to jump on white folks. When I'm in college, we didn't say minority students. We say people talk about inclusion and all of that. We were the black student movement. Okay, we were looking to impose black systems, values, and stuff in white spaces because we were there. Okay, and go ahead, Charles. I'm sorry.
But even with that, so all of it at all points requires historical context. So reasons why we didn't do it and haven't done it. On the front end of this thing, there certainly was a disagreement amongst the free in the 17 and the 1800s when there were opportunities for subsidized expatriation. But that disagreement was twofold. It wasn't about white folks, and it wasn't really about assimilation. It was about, we worked to build this thing, we should be able to stay here. And then that other group that didn't want to go because they said, if we leave, what happens to those enslaved? So, and I ain't saying there wasn't no sellouts amongst them. I'm saying they weren't even a part of the argument, right? So that's that period. And then even in that period, you ended up with people going back to the continent or going to the Caribbean. That occurred. Then when we get to this space where the Jews miraculously did this thing that we think was super duper, Africa was colonized. These ain't even like scenarios. So in 49, when they get to overthrow, or not even overthrow, when they get armed by the British initially, and whatever the remnants of French armament were still there, and start killing and displacing folks, all of Africa was colonized. So there is no point in time where you can line these stories up for what actually happened because of what actually happened. And so even Holocaust ain't a Jewish word. It's a Greek word. You'll find Marcus Garvey saying Holocaust before the Holocaust. But we think it's that hard. We think they own that word. They think they own that word. They certainly had their history, but our history was and is also. And it's not that it's not that we just didn't do, is that there were a whole bunch of scenarios that impacted our ability to be able to do that.
I agree.
And so, so but it's out of that we end up with, it's out of that we end up with the, psychological misorientation, and the way you see anxiety is because all of these things, and again, so in the latter 60s, you guys are well into, the Black arts movement and the Black studies movement, and in the Midwest, and the Northeast, y'all got a relative. There's a relative advantage there to what was going on in the Southeast, South, and the Southwest, where they was just trying to get books in school, let alone so it like most of the literature that we talk about now, it wasn't in nobody's school. That's what the Black studies movement was about. So that stuff wasn't even in play before you guys decided that now we're here, this is what we want it to look like. Right? And so
right, that's right.
Yeah, and so all of those things contextually, and that's why I say like when we it's nothing wrong with being said in as much as if we don't add the context back to one of our early conversations, if we don't add the context, then it's blaming the victim as opposed to kind of lay out how it got to this. But I've talked to some of my folks who are in that political space, and I was asking them, I was like, why does Hakeem Jeffries get a pass? Why does this dude in St. Louis get a pass? Why does that other dude in New York get a pass? Why does that sister in Ohio, why she get a pass? And they said kind of, there's like, well, there's certain of us who believe that is a path for us. That ain't no path for us. United States is not going to subsidize us doing nothing. And until we understand and believe and just be willing to accept that no Britain, no France, no United States, no Jewish, no Israel, period. Now, if we had all of that, we'd probably be somewhere on the West Coast, chilling, and everybody be like, man, look at them Africans. But that ain't what we got. And so, but that part can't be left up. That was Belfort Accord. That was something that such Sykes-Picot, all those things mean something. They all mean that a white superpower subsidized those people's land grab so that they could not go back to their countries. We don't want you in Britain, we don't want you in France, and we don't want you in the United States. But all of the noise is about what happened in 1933 when that other white man said, we don't want you in Germany. But all that stuff has been going on. And so another part of why we struggle with our anxiety is because we don't understand world history. And we just think this is something why we keep getting this wrong? Because Chuck D is right. It takes a nation of millions to hold us back.
And he's not
And
talking about the Holocaust that was, he's talking about the one that's still going on.
yes, yes. And so even now, this whole conversation about they have a right to defend themselves. That is illegal in international law. They're the aggressor. They're the occupying force.
Really.
And so
But a level of brutality that I have not read about.
and
Uh,
this it
it
has
is,
been the
I
same.
read,
And so yes.
it is just, I mean, I read where they watched these Palestinians farm and cultivate these olive trees. Olive trees. Did you all hear about that?
Hmm.
They were farming these olive trees, and they allowed this olive tree farm to grow and to flourish. They got a horticulturalist came and dug up 20 or 30 acres of these olive trees and replaced them on the Israel side to take away their ability to earn and to live off those olives. I mean, that's how detailed and brutal this assassination is.
And they take land all the time. The Israeli government subsidizes repatriation. When white folks go over there, the Jewish people go over there. They get guns and other armament to go attack Palestinians and take their homeland and expand their thing. That
Imagine leaving home every day not knowing if you're going to have a home when you get
when you
back.
get back, that's
That's
the nature of the
how
Palestinian life.
that's how it happens over there.
And so,
You have to take what you can because you don't know if you'll be able to go back to your home, not a house, your home tonight.
But
yes,
but Larry, I would suggest while the circumstances are not the physical circumstances are not the same, that is what it means to be black in America.
First of all, Mike Jones, the once again you are 100% on point, and the displacement. I'm almost to the point where I hear a person talk about the Great Migration, and us as losing a great deal of credibility, because this was the Great Displacement.
Right.
Here you kill 40,000 blacks, and you offer pennies on the dollar in 24 hours for people to get out, or I'm killing everything over here, and made good on those promises. I'm killing everything over. And I'm not talking about what I read in someone else's history. This is a little personal now. And, we fail to see our plight over here.
And Larry, that was my whole point when I was brought up the Zionist issue uh, uh, at the beginning. That we can see that and quote understand a rationale for that, and we can't make a corollary to our condition, and that really speaks to a level of internalized oppression. That means you're not even resisting. Okay, I mean that you're not psychologically, emotionally capable of resisting. Because if you were, you would have a reaction to this that would not be trying to explain why you were at fault. Now, you might find yourself physically in a condition you ain't strong enough to do anything about it. And so you accept that, but you have not made it legitimate for this to happen to you. And fundamentally, there are two possibilities, emotional possibilities of a response, emotional response, brother. And that is someplace between hate and indifference. But love ain't one of them, man.
Love is not an option. Indifference is probably the best so we can
It's
go
the
on.
healthiest.
It's the healthiest. Because you can do everything with indifference. Hate
Right.
take you over. Some things
It
you
does. And that's why I say it. But the natural response
is hate. Yeah,
is
absolutely.
hate to indifference. The the,
Yeah.
the enlightened response becomes indifference.
Yes, it does.
But the first response got to be hate.
It's got to be, if in fact you have any sort of self-esteem and agency over
Right.
yourself whatsoever.
Right.
And so and another thing, like when we are looking, so when we go back to so when we go back to the ever the not the evolution of SNCC, but kind of that transformation of SNCC in the latter 60s and then into, then that kind of blurring of SNCC in the Panthers 60s, mid 70s, that was just failed strategy.
Right.
And because, and I mean, and you even get it now, we are, to your earlier point, Mark, we're not an American colony in Africa. We're an American colony in America.
That's correct. And our major export is servitude to this day.
Yes. So that's a whole so we went through these periods of time where, well, why can't we be like, why we can't do like Ghana, why we can't do like Kenya, why we can't do like Angola, why we can't do like Cuba, because why we can't do like the Haitians, because it was more Haitians on the island than there were white folks, and the white folks couldn't keep coming back, and so none of these dynamics work. And I mean, and sometimes when you look at, like, if you study COINTELPRO and you listen to some of the responses of the folks who were a victim of COINTELPRO, it never dawned on them that the United States would do to them what the United States was doing. Like, you run around talking about what you're about to do. These people are assassinating people now.
Today.
No, I'm saying then. I'm talking like real time, during that period of time when they was talking tough about the United States. The United States had already overthrew the dude in Iran.
Mm-hmm.
They had killed 2 or 3 leaders in South and Central America and overthrew them in order for all of that national
and
imprisoned
many others.
And imprisoned and disappeared many other folks. And Stokely Carmichael's talking about what he gonna do. He's just lucky he lived to die.
He really is. Yeah.
Had no idea what it meant to fight against empire.
Right.
No.
And that was, and so, but even now we have that same problem. And we talk, but our economies of scale are still off. These people, we're captives. Some of us certainly could decide to go and live somewhere else. But there are reasons why we stay.
Right.
And if we go be here, we got to fight.
For the comfort.
There is relative comfort, but those of us who could live where we want to live comfortably. If you live comfortably here,
right,
you could go and live abroad comfortably. Mm-hmm. So it ain't the comfort that's keeping you here. I mean, you are comfortable. There's some relative comfort for sure, but it's probably your family. It's probably the familiar. So, like,
that's what I'm saying. Familiarity is home. This is home for us.
Yes. Yeah.
Prison is home for us.
This minimum security thing that we in.
Right.
We're
in a camp. It ain't.
We're in one of the feds.
There you're right. It's a camp.
We're in a federal camp, and we're comfortable with that federal camp is home for us.
But that's for us.
Right.
Some of us ain't on that federal camp.
Right.
Exactly.
Some of us on work. Some of us is on. Some of
Some
us
of
is
us
in
are in the
Angola.
institution.
Wait a minute.
Some
A
of us
lot
is
of
in
us,
Angola. We down in Louisiana, like we
Right.
one big Angola.
right?
And
Yeah.
so,
But that's what
that's
the
the
big
whole
dilemma is.
battle of
And
this
that's what
whole
makes our situation so difficult to to put your arms around and come up with a solution for, because that is exactly what we're dealing with. And it is extremely unique to us and us alone.
But
We have nothing else to look to, nothing else. We have other somewhat examples, but nothing like what we have to endure and what we have endured. It's just a very unique experience.
but Gerald, my issue is not that we got a solution, okay? Because there literally might not be a solution. I mean, that given the dynamics, the demographics, and a whole bunch of stuff, you might not have an answer other than the collapse of the country, which might eventually be on its way to happening. So
might happen.
right. But
That's
here's the
kind of what
point.
almost has to happen for
Wait a
us.
minute. But and now that's gonna be my point. My issue with us is we have not intellectually and emotionally accepted that reality.
Right.
Because if we did, the collapse of the country ain't a problem for us. Okay. But as long as you identify with the plantation owner, when the big house catches on fire, you'll help put the damn fire out, as opposed to saying, "Well, I couldn't strike a match, but lightning struck, hit it, and it's for. And if you need me to put it out, it ain't gonna happen." Okay, my little hut back here and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, all my stuff will be gone, but yours will be gone too, and I would have lived to see it. And that's the emotional space you ought to be claiming for yourself. Now, you can't do a lot of necessarily about your physical environment. We don't have the power, we don't have the resources, we don't have the number. But internally, for you, who you are, to you, you control all of that. I often think about the Count of Monte Cristo, Alexander Dumas, other great character, other than the Three Musketeers and D'Artagnan. And what makes the Count of Monte Cristo survive is he never accepted being in prison, and when he didn't know how he was going to get out, he always was planning to get out so he could get revenge on the man that put him there. So I would like for us just to own ourselves, to the emotionally, psychologically, spiritually, even if we can't change our physical condition. Because as George Clinton, the Funk Masters, puts it, if you free your mind, your ass will follow.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So can I share why that's a difficult proposition?
Oh, I know it's difficult because it ain't happened yet. But go ahead, preach, brother. Shit.
And so our constant self-evaluation and comparison and comparing ourselves to some impossible ideal results. A preoccupation with rejection of our old ideals, values, and behaviors that we associate with our old kind of just our old way of being, kind of our, whatever our unconscious thoughts are, whatever those things that flow, they are different. Whatever comes to mind is different than what we see. Our subjective reality is different than the objective reality, if that makes sense. And so what we think and feel is necessarily in stark contrast to what we are seeing otherwise.
Give me an example of that, Doc.
Um, a simple thing. It like Gerald, how long did it take for you to just be comfortable walking around with locks?
I didn't hear you.
I said, how long did it take you to just be comfortable walking around with locks? Like where you was just doing it and it was never a second thought. You was never thinking about what them people think. You was just
Oh, it
like
took a
this my
long time.
right. And so
It
so
took a
is
long
that. That's
time.
what I mean. And so
Mhm.
so is that, or it's when you walk into the room and you the only brother that walk into the room.
Right.
It's how am I showing up? Like you got some thoughts about who you are, but you probably are in touch with the fact that, now you probably good, but I'm saying on the front end of your career, the front end of you leaving safe spaces and going to spend 8 hours with white folks all day. It's that.
And then for me too, it went through stages because I got comfortable with it, in the prosecutor's office, and I got comfortable with it in private practice. But then when I went to DC to work for Claire McCaskill, I got uncomfortable with it again.
Yeah, because so now you're in a new
Because
environment.
I'm in a new environment, a new space,
Yep.
and I'm one of few blacks in that space, and I'm with dreads.
Yep.
So I got uncomfortable with it to the point that I cut them off.
Yep. So then it's like you start all over again.
I start all over again.
And so so that's that part. Difficulty maintaining emotional control over your anger towards white folks, while at the same time having a limited sense of the positivity and joy and self-love of the Black identity. So like literally stuck in the middle. So at the emerging consciousness that is the enemy, white supremacy is the enemy, while on the other hand, still dealing with, growing up watching Tarzan and, Miss Jane Pittman and Sounder, right? There was your broadcast, that was your broadcast image, right? And so that becomes a part of it. Low self-esteem because in comparison to your ideal self, life seems in vain and useless and sometimes repulsive. So that lack of tolerance from where you are to where you're trying to get. And if you ain't seen a lot of people get to whatever it is that you aspire to get, it's kind of hard for you to believe you could get there. Kind of regardless of your resources and your skills. In fact, I came across an article today. It's like, there's a difference between, or knowing what to do isn't enough. You got to have that ability to apply it. Right. And so if you lay, identity development, on top of that, and you figure like all the people we've ever known, and you be like, man, that dude, he was sharp. That sister was sharp. Like, why they wash up? As much as it looked like it, they wasn't built like you. They didn't have that other, wherever it is that you got what you got that allows you to ascend. All of those people that we've been in contact with, they ain't got it.
Grit.
Whatever it is, and wherever it came from. And like, some of these people, they was better than you in this, and they did this as well, and da 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 da. But you made the climb they did.
For our listeners, if you just want an example, you see it in athletics all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Guys who get to the pros will tell you that there was a whole ton of guys that they played against that were better than them.
Mm-hmm.
But as you said, whatever that other thing that has to be in play is not always in play. for everybody else. And I think you've hit on something, Charles, because one of the mistakes that I think we do in talking about that issue is we always frame it like the guys that got there did everything right, or they were built a certain way, and they could do this, and they were kind of almost destined. And I think the reality is, no, that ain't the case. Everybody messes up all the time. It just so happens that, yeah, you built with the grit, and your mistakes at the time you made them were not fatal. Somebody else makes the same mistakes at a different time, and it's fatal for them. Because when you get to this age, probably your age is too, but you can look back on a whole time. It's like, I guess it's like being in combat. I could have got killed anywhere, anywhere.
A couple of times.
Yeah, a couple of times. So if you landed in Normandy Beach on D-Day and ended up in Berlin, you know how many times you had the opportunity to be sent home in a box, okay? And the guys trained just as hard as you did, and they didn't make it. You did. Some of it, it is what it is. It's the randomness of chance in life, in some regards. And I think what you have to teach people is don't focus on the effort. Don't focus on the results. Because there ain't but two things you can control: your preparation and your effort. And then you're going to have to live with consequences, and you don't know how that's going to go out. And I'm at the point now, when I talk to people about stuff like this, I say, as long as you got clock, keep playing. The score don't count till the game is over anyway. So the score, and I think our problem, or younger people's problem now, they keep in score. They watch the clock. They watch the scoreboard the way fans in the stands do. And I try to tell people, when you playing, if you're a professional, you ain't, when you look up, you're looking at the clock. You ain't looking at the score, because you just want to know how much time we still got, and I'll adjust what I got to get done based on the time. But as long as I got clock, the only way I lose is I quit. If I keep playing, you got to beat me, and I don't think you can beat me.
Right. And I think that's the exact way you have to approach it. And you have to keep taking those chances.
Right.
You may down one of those chances.
Right.
But you got to keep taking the chances. You can't, like you said, you can't look at the score. You got to keep looking at the clock, and you got to keep taking chances and risking dying at every one of those chances. And these young people now, like you said, they're at a comfort level where they don't even want to look at the clock. They think the clock gonna always be running.
That's people.
Looking at the
score. That ain't the young people, that's people. That ain't the young people, that's people.
That's people in general, that's people. But I'm just saying,
but I like that analogy.
I think of it more though, Dr. Alexander, especially when I look at my children, they got this sense of entitlement that they just look at it differently. They think it's just gonna be here, and it's not. And they don't feel the urgency because of their comfort to take those chances. They be like, why should I take a chance?
Well, I'm going to add.
But when you go back to TSU for homecoming, them jokers with a 30-year age span all act the same.
Yes.
Period. That's what it looked like when I go to Spell House every year. Folks is looking at the scoreboard. Ain't nobody worried about the time. They down there flossing and all of that, which is cool. But we at risk that day too. And we go down there and act like we ain't. And then we say, those
are habits that we have as a whole, as a culture. I'm
not even necessarily talking about it as habits. I'm just talking about it how, so if you sit around, if you go out to, if you've already been, or if you go to another holiday gathering, and y'all get into this conversation. Y'all gonna get into a conversation about kids and the internet, right? Kids and social media. You almost have no friends who ain't on social media. So let's quit putting all that on the kids. We do it too. That's all I'm saying. And so
But
it's like,
it has a different effect on the children, just like, I
that's
think
because of
is that
brain development.
Australia where they're gonna ban social media for anybody 14 and younger?
That is because of the relative threat that exists because of their continued brain development. But in terms of triggering off a day, that ain't no different for adults than it is for kids.
Adults, I see what you're saying. Yeah,
adults trick off the same amount of
we're as
time.
addicted to social media and some of those things
And
as
I
they
don't
are
like
too.
I don't like the word addicted, but I do like tricking off. So
Okay.
they be tricking off time on social media all day. And then all these kids, just like gaming. Grown men game just like kids.
They do.
But when you be in these conversations, the kids. When we talk about this stuff we've been talking about all day, this stuff we're talking about all day, somebody be like, oh, the kids need to know this. That same joker saying that, and he can't even be in this conversation with us. Whoever it is. Because he don't know it either.
Right.
And so part of the reason why our kids can trick off on gaming and can trick off on social media and can not be aware of any of this is because we're not aware of any of this and we're tricking off.
And we got to challenge ourselves too.
And so we got to raise that level of inquiry and curiosity.
And we got to start I think we need some campaigns. We need some actual community campaigns raising these issues and challenging our people to give up some of these things as a public campaign. We have not been making any public campaigns about things that we need to change as Black people, and we need to raise that elevation and do that.
And we be sitting around waiting on the Panthers to come back, and thinking that he might be the next Martin, or he reminds me of Malcolm. Everybody has already prescribed all of these things. We prescribe. We do all this all the time. And so this stuff is really, like we say that kind of stuff. The Chinese people, they have Saturday school. Well, Joker, do that. It ain't complicated. You have Saturday school then. If you think that the genius of Chinese people is Saturday school, well, do that thing. This stuff is just not, that part of it is not that complicated.
And all our sanctuaries are empty on Saturday, so we got plenty of space.
We got plenty of space to do it, right? And so it's ultimately and it's not that we aren't doing these things, it's that's just how heavy the lift is. Because however much we're doing, however hard we're working, there's still work to do. And that part too, we get wrong. Because even when y'all was doing what y'all was doing, y'all was an end of the people who needed what y'all was doing and who was going to benefit from it, right? And so it's somebody in your cohort still walking around St. Louis talking about what we did back in the day. That joker would never lined up next to you. And so and saying that everybody didn't march with Martin, everybody ain't even go see, everybody didn't like Malcolm, all that stuff, people just be saying that stuff, And so, yes, sir.
No, I think you just said something that we don't spend enough time referencing. That this is hard. That being Black in America is hard. Okay, and everything in it is designed for you to fail. So every day you don't fail is a victory.
It's a victory.
And we don't give us enough credit for 400 years worth of the worst shit in the world, and we still here, still standing, and basically undefeated. Okay? We got issues. yeah, we ought to be better and we need to do more and all of that. But America, if which is trying and has always tried to eradicate us in some shape, form, or fashion. And in a lot of ways, America don't have a culture, but for there is nothing indigenous or unique to America that wasn't created by black folks.
That is
White folks
That's
not
what I
ain't.
would say. We're
that
the
Yeah,
is
most
not
unique thing for
influenced
them.
by
yeah.
us. Right.
White America ain't got no culture.
Correct.
We we
We are the
we are
culture.
the original Americans because we had our forefathers had to reinvent themselves in this space on this land where they didn't want to be and with each other who didn't and they didn't even know who each other was. And from that we became these people. So at some point we could tell white folks kiss our ass if you really want to know the truth. And no matter what you've done to us, we have prevailed. Now we ain't where we like to be, but we don't give ourselves enough credit for still standing here today. And in
We,
spite of America, and not because of it, but in spite of it.
we've got to use a different rubric also than when we talk about not being where we want to be. Because if we use the rubric that we should be using, our comparison level for where we are, if I'll just give it to you like a pre and post test. If you grade a student based on their pre-test and their gain versed on their counterparts pre-test and their
Right,
gain, nobody comes close to us
right.
because the pre-test that we had was was unparalleled.
And
And
and Larry, you can find literature that says that. You can find literature, you can find sociological literature that says what the African American community has done is remarkable. And that's not coming from black scholars. That's coming from international, sociologists and anthropologists that are like, living this whole period of time in a caste system. And to have, to kind of be wherever we are is other than where we started.
Now,
And,
Charles,
and to have done that is remarkable to a lot of people.
now
and
I just want to say to your point, look how long it took us today to get there. We started, we've been, we've been talking for a couple hours and we have run an emotional, intellectual gamut from, and we dug the hole for ourselves when we started this conversation. And somewhere in the middle of that conversation, you could have assessed that conversation as saying, we hopeless and this is terrible. And by reasoning and discussing our way through it, we come out on the back end. America kiss my ass, okay?
Yes.
But we worked our way to this, okay? We didn't start the conversation there. So we got to figure out a way to emotionally, psychologically manage what it means to be black in America. And I think the first thing we need to do is withdraw a little bit. We ought to let Donald Trump and MAGA America, that's white folks' problem. Whatever he tear up, whatever fall apart, don't call me. I don't care. I ain't watching no news. We need to be figuring out us.
Correct.
And don't worry about them. That's their problem. Because the longer we fool with them, the worse we get and the madder we get at ourselves.
Exactly.
The minute we quit messing with them, we say, oh hell, you know what? We got it. Now we ain't got it. As a matter of fact, I would rather be us than them any day.
The other thing, Mike, is I think exactly what you say. We should stop thinking about them, but we should also drill down at the local level. what is going on with our politics at the local level and how we come up with a black plan for dealing with that. Because local politics is going to affect you much quicker than national politics. I really feel that politics is all local.
I
And
think
many of
what
us
I'm
don't
trying to
understand
say
that.
though was
Part,
beyond
part of
politics.
what we got to teach.
Yeah,
And
Larry, it's right.
Yeah,
It's
I
beyond
think this.
politics.
I think this conversation is beyond politics. I think
Right.
this has to do with the wholesale agency of us individually and collectively.
Right.
Oh, I agree
Larry,
with you.
but
I
Larry,
just
but
was
are
making
you
it.
saying
I was
beyond?
just making the analogy with
No,
Lee
I understand exactly what
Trump
you're
and them
saying,
along.
Gerald. I encompass that as well. Go ahead, Doc. Ask your question.
I was just asking a point of clarity. Are you saying it's beyond electoral politics, or is beyond politics? Period.
No, 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 no. I think that this conversation is a conversation in which if you take to heed what we're talking about now, you'll take care of the politics that you need to.
And that's kind of what I was. This is a political
Yeah,
conversation.
Right.
yeah, you'll take
Right.
care. You will.
This
Well, everything's political.
right. But that
What you eat,
becomes the thing is
who
that
you
so many
marry,
of us, if you
where
say the
you
word,
bank.
they think voting. If you say politics, if you say political, they think voting. They don't think strategy and the management of resources, the governing of resources, the allocation of resources. They don't think all of those things. They think voting, and they think some jackleg dude that they pastor let come talk to them 2 weeks before the election. That's what they think. They don't think about what goes into. So again, all these people will be talking about.
That's something we should stop doing too.
Malcolm.
Pastors should not allow
They
politicians
should stop letting that happen.
coming to church doing service. If they want to talk to the congregation, they should set up a seminar that's outside of church hours.
You know what,
People
guys?
talk about Malcolm all the time, but they don't really know nothing about the message to the grassroots, and they don't know nothing about the ballot. They don't know nothing about what he was saying about what Black power is and what Black political power is.
Charles, the last poet had a line that what did he say? He said, "Niggas love to hear Malcolm rap, but they didn't love Malcolm." And there is a fundamental difference. So I really what we were wrestling with and still are, and that's how we ought to be defining the problem, is in this moment, how do we decide at the existential level who we are, who we want to be, and that has nothing to do with America. America just happens to be the physical space we find ourselves.
It's the context.
Right.
And and on that note, first of all, Mike Jones, you're looking more and more like Jeremiah Wright today. He's looking like a healthy Jeremiah Wright, isn't he?
Well,
is it just me? Is it just me, or is he looking like Jeremiah Wright? Is that just me?
Well, we do have me and the brother do have something in common.
I know he's.
Okay?
I know
he's got something in common.
I know he's a good Omega.
Yeah.
I know he's a great Omega. But you're looking like him today, and you sound like him when you talk about America and putting it in its proper context. But I think we could borrow a phrase from all of you all. But Mike, one thing we're going to take to heart today is the fact that we need to admit that being a Black man and being Black in America is hard. I mean, we act like it's a cakewalk, and it is not. It is not. Gerald, you're 100% right. We need to control everything from our doorstep forward. And Doc, I can't say enough about what what the psychological framework you laid out today. I'm going to have to go back and listen to that and take notes on that.
Yeah, same here.
Yeah, that was phenomenal. Any closing? I mean, if you got brief closing comments,
I got one. And so again, we started off talking about, we charged genocide and we identified, a level of betrayal, and I do think not not for kicking up dirt, but I think again in the interest of truth and historical accuracy, that these things have occurred and people have done these things, saying it's in the best interest of the people, and it's not. It's usually self-serving, and so and because I threw out Garvey today, I'm necessarily going to start with the NAACP that helped to bring down the largest organized Black movement in the United States. And the NAACP did that, right? And then it was the NAACP, so because we're talking about we charge genocide and and Paul Robeson, they agreed to go in hard and make them even more vulnerable. They agreed to that, right? It was the NAACP that said, we're not sending you additional security, Megger, because you keep talking to Martin about doing direct action campaigns. Days, weeks after his last request for more security, he was assassinated. And so I'm not going to blame the entire organization, so to speak, but one of the people who was a part of a whole bunch of that was Roy Wilkins, right? And so, and White had his part in it too on the front end. It was White that was involved with the stuff.
And so that's just an example of Jews don't always get it right.
But again, that part too, that part spread pretty even. And so
we all right.
We all got that.
None of us can be absolved for that if we go.
We all got that. But it's like having an understanding.
I was ready to stop it, Brother White. See that way.
But the point is because it also will help us do better now, because one of the things we always want to say, well, back in the day, we was always together. And that's just patently false.
Right.
Right? And so if we was all together, Denmark would have been successful.
Right.
Gabriel would have been successful. Right? And so we ain't always been together. And we ain't all together now, but we can work harder toward that. And one of the ways that we get there is to be honest about how we got here.
Right. Well, you know what? America is built on a lie, and every day it tells a greater lie. And we have become American in the sense that we don't have any commitment to the truth. Because like what you say, if we just tell the truth, that's what your old folks used to tell, boy, just tell the truth. If we were telling ourselves the truth, we would know who we are, why we're here, and what we need to do going forward. It's getting rid of all of the fantasy and the lies. And all of these lies are about making white folks feel good about being white folks in America. Okay, It ain't got nothing to do with us. We used to could lie to white people for our benefit. We tell them something and then we go tell each other the truth. So fundamentally, we have to figure out how to deal with the truth, the ugliness of the truth about where we are, where we've been, and how much harder and ugly it's going to be before we get to wherever we're going. And I would suggest you ain't gonna be able to pray your ass out of this, out of this. Okay, ain't no help coming from no place else other than what we bring.
Right. Gerald, you have any comment? Mike, well said.
I think that's well said by Mike. There's no other help coming but the help you bring. Period.
We the Calvary.
That's it. And we need to also understand, and I'm gonna date myself, that you plan on LA and you in the Boston Garden.
Right.
You ain't gonna get no calls.
You ain't gonna get no calls. Man, and they're gonna have the heat on in the locker room in June. Okay.
That's right. That's right. Well, I love you, brothers. Happy holidays.
All right.
And we want to thank you all for tuning in, and we look forward to very productive 2025. Don't know how prosperous it's going to be, but
It's
I
gonna be
think,
prosperous.
yeah, oh yeah, I expect for that, but it's going to be productive.
Mhm.
Thing may fall apart, just like just like it needs to.
Right.